إن الله نعم ما يعظكم به إن الله كان سميعا بصيرا يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولو الأمر منكم فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا ألم تر إلى الذين يزعمون أنهم آمنوا بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك يريدون أن يتحكموا إلى الطاغوت وقد أمروا أن يكفروا به ويريد الشيطان أن يضلهم ضلالا بعيدا. Translation. Verily, Allah commands you to make over the trust to those entitled to them, and that when you judge between men, you judge with justice. And surely excellent is that which Allah admonishes you. Allah is all hearing, all seeing. O ye who believe, obey Allah and obey His Messenger and those who are in authority among you. And if you differ in anything among yourselves, refer it to Allah and His Messenger, if you are believers in Allah and the last day. That is best and most commendable in the end. Dost thou not know of those who pretend that they believe in what has been revealed to thee and what has been revealed before thee? They desire to seek judgment from the rebellious, although they were commanded not to obey them, and Satan desires to lead them far astray. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. I'd like to request Nabi Mirsab to start off with opening remarks and silent prayer.
Please join me in dua. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ameen. Jazakumullah everyone for joining in. This is the continuation of our series of webinars around parenting. And a quick reminder as to why we are conducting these webinars, because last year there was a Majlis-e-Shura proposal around reasons why members sometimes feel disengaged. One of the causes of that disengagement was our inadequate parenting. And therefore, the Tarbiyat department was entrusted with the task of holding monthly webinars, which are to be followed by similar discussions at the local level. So we are all educated about what does Islam, Quran, Sunnah, Hazrat Masih Maud salatu wasalam, and Hazrat Khalifatul Masih expect us as parents. About 2 months ago, I think we announced today's topic, because we hear about it all the time, as to what is the difference in some of the cultural practices around treatment of sons and daughters. There is no judgment being made on anyone, but it's a reminder we should be comfortable with these discussions if our heart is contented. And if I'm with taqwa, treating my children equally, I should not be bothered by this question or this discussion. So my humble request to everyone is to please approach this discussion from the position of personal righteousness. What changes, if any, I have to make in my own conduct, in my own family, that should be my focus. Don't pick on individual words. Look at the larger theme and the spirit of the program. Another quick reminder before we go ahead is today's discussion is primarily focused on this topic. Yes, there can be other discussions and questions around parenting, but you have other questions, there will be other forums for it. I would request humbly everyone to stick to today's topic, narrowly about sons and daughters, a little bit more broadly about parenting. So that's the discussion and the scope of the discussion today. I'm grateful and would like to welcome our very honorable missionaries, Abdullah Dibba Saab, Mahmood Kausar Saab, and back to you, Rabbi Saab. I will love to hear the discussion and learn from everyone today.
Jazakallah Nabi Mir Saab. Najib, over to you to lay down the ground rules for this program.
Jazakallah Rabbi Saab, and really looking forward to this conversation. I was actually talking to my sister before the program, so she's also excited to hear, and inshallah we'll have a good discussion afterwards too. But with ground rules, as we've always done, and as the practice of the National Tarbiyat Department, we'll start with those questions that members had an opportunity to submit beforehand. So we'll first pose those to our respected panelists. After that, we'll have an opportunity for live questions. It is important, though, that during live questions, that if you do raise your hand using the blue icon on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, that you do stay around your computer, as we'll come to you and ask you to unmute to ask your question to the respected panelists. Please do remember, though, that by the grace of Allah the Almighty, we're joined by many hundreds of our brothers and sisters, and many members have questions and comments they'd like to make. So it is our humble request that you try to keep your questions concise, not saying cut anything out, but try to keep it concise, under 30 seconds if possible. No long comments, and this is our humble request to you. In the end, we will also, if you have questions that you want to send in via the Q&A box, we'll also keep an eye open for those. But again, we'll prioritize those questions that come in via raised hand, at least for the live questions. And in the end, and most importantly, to remember that this is a program of Jamaat of the Promised Messiah, alayhi salatu wasalam. So please remember and practice the proper etiquettes. And with that being said, I'm really looking forward to the discussion and the conversation. So back over to you.
So I'm gonna straight away go to the panelists, and I think it's very important, like Nabi Mirza was mentioning. The Holy Quran says, "Fadhakkir in nafa'ati dhikra." We're here to remind, and we're here to disseminate. When you're here to divide or make a differentiation between culture and religion, sometimes that gets very meshed. I think that's the purpose of today's topic, not to say who's right, who's wrong, what are the equal rights, or how are the rights divided, but as to how do we differentiate what does Allah Ta'ala say, what does the Quran say, what does Sunnah say, and what do we sometimes find as a cultural practice. So without further ado, Rabbi Saab, if you can help us out, and what is your 2 cents on this topic?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Hazrat al-Muslim Maud radhiyallahu anhu was once on a tour. While he was in Europe, a journalist asked him a question, and when Huzur radhiyallahu anhu gave the answer, the journalist kind of had an impression that people are trying to progress, move forward, and you seem to be more impressed with things that are teachings of Islam that are very backward. And as a Muslim who said, this is the actual difference, that we as members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, followers of the Promised Messiah, we are indeed trying to go back 1400 years, because what we are trying to follow is the teachings that have been established by the chosen Prophet of Allah for all people, and it is the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So in this same principle, whatever it is that we try to do, whatever teachings we try to discuss in any of our programs, that Khalifatul Masih highlights in any of his sermons and classes, the best of those answers are those that go as far back as possible and closest to 1400, 1500 years ago, to the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the era of the revelation of the Holy Quran, of the Sunnah and the practices of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he did things and said things and people were there to listen and copy and do them so that they were able to reach us. And in that same token, when today we are talking about parenting, we need not try to come up with the newest ideas and the best things to do. We have examples that have been set for us. And the Holy Quran talks about that in Surah Al-Ahzab, that the best example for you is the life of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When we understand what that standard is, and then we start to work our way towards it. But we also hear from researchers, they tell us that whatever the goal is, first it has to be clear. What is the goal? In raising our sons and our daughters, what's the best thing we're trying to achieve? And if the best thing is that instruction of the Holy Quran, that the life of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is the best that you can ever get, then the steps that we take may be different every now and then, but the goal has to be clear first. And then we focus on what's the next step today. I have 2 kids, 2 sons, 2 years old and 4 years old. I can either focus on them now and focus on a book like Way of the Seekers that tells me that, when your child uses the bathroom, clean them right now from day one. It's very important for the moral upbringing of that child. Don't scream and yell at your child. Those are important things now, today, for your 2-year-old. Or I can start thinking of what am I going to do when he's a teenager. But things are going to change so much by the time my kids become teenagers that I may be clueless at that time. I may lose them today. So for everyone, the approach may be slightly different. So in this discussion, what I like about all these webinars is everyone can find something, and we're trying to go back to the roots. And when we talk about things like education, for example, which is important to everyone, our Khulafa have been emphasizing them so much. When you talk about education, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Al-Khamis bin Aziz, in his speech in 2017, the Waqfati now in the Ijtima, said, look, when you live in the West, everyone has access to all this education, schools and colleges. And I mean, it's kind of redundant to keep talking about the importance of that. But along with that, if all of us don't get our religious education grounded, then there's a lot we're going to lose, because you don't have that exposure when you're in these Western countries. So keeping that balance in whatever we're doing is very essential. But when we now understand the goal that we're trying to achieve, how do we get to that? Men have different sets of goals sometimes to women. When we treat them, men would be focused on one thing sometimes, and women would focus on other things. So because a man has to do some things and you don't teach your girl or emphasize so much on that to get that same thing, doesn't mean that you're not treating them equally. And we're going to go into the details of that. For example, in the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, women came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, well, the men get all these opportunities and they can attain the level of shahada, of martyrdom, dying in the way of Allah. When they go for jihad and they fight, they're told to be brave and all these things happen. But for us as women, we cannot do any of that. They get those blessings and we don't. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ gave a beautiful response, again, to all women and children that are listening to it today. He said, you can also attain that level of martyrdom, but you're not expected to go and stand in the ranks and fight. For you, it's about upbringing your children in the most Islamic way so that they become responsible Muslims tomorrow. Then you will get the same reward as the men are getting who stand in the ranks and fight for the sake of Allah. In Surah At-Tahrim, Allah Almighty gave us the example of 2 women, the wife of Pharaoh and Hazrat Maryam, that these are the 2 that can be examples for you, all men and women. Now, it doesn't mean that men are going to lose out because they're not women, but that's not it. It's about the character of those people. Hazrat the wife of Pharaoh was in very difficult circumstances within her household. She was praying for Allah Ta'ala to save her from Pharaoh. And some of us sometimes find ourselves in situations like that, when we have that internal rift and internal difficulties going on. Or that Maryam, who had pious people around her, but her society was very hostile towards her. Sometimes we are Ahmadis, but we live in a society which is not, believing. How do we deal with such situations? So all of these, in a nutshell, is that whatever answers it is that we're looking for, whatever step it is to the way, whether you have a 3-year-old daughter or a 15-year-old son who's going to college at 17, you're worried about those things. All the answers to all our questions, all our worries is in the Holy Quran. And in order to find that, we have the institution of Khilafat. Through Khalifatul Masih, all our worries, all our answers, before we even realize that there are problems for us, Huzur has already answered them in light of the Holy Quran and in light of the spirit of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So those are just my couple of thoughts to start this, inshallah. And I look forward to more into the conversation.
Jazakallah Dibbasab. On the same flip side of the coin, Kausar Saab, what's your 2 cents on the topic? What are you seeing? What's on the ground in New York?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Jazakallah. Hopefully it's worth the full 2 cents. Who knows? I actually wanted to start off with an experience I had in 2010. 2010 or 2011, I drove up to Milwaukee. And I met, as many of you have met before, he has passed away now, is Rashid Ahmad American Sahib, who was the first, American missionary who went all the way from America, traveled all the way to Rabwa, met Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani Raziyallahu anhu, and became a missionary and so on and so forth. But what was interesting about the countless stories he shared with me and some of my Jamia student friends at the time was that when he first arrived there, the very first day, the next morning he got ready, he put on shalwar kameez, achkan, whatever, pagadi, khusse, whatever it was, he wore a full on, you can say desi clothing. And he proceeded straight to have the mulaqat with Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani. And the moment he entered, the first thing Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani said was, "Where did you get these clothes from?" And his response was, I got this hat from somebody else, and I got this kurta from somebody else, and the achkan from somebody else, and so on and so forth. And he said, the reason I did that was because I wanted to look as Muslim as possible. And right away, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani stopped him and corrected him. He says, 1 second. Whatever you see here is not all certified Muslim. It's not all certified Islam. He said, in fact, you will see certain things here that are not connected to Islam. They're cultural. While you may see things in America that were closer to Islam, even though they may be different in culture. He gave a simple example. He said, look, here in Pakistan at that time, he said, when people are walking, they'll just stop as they're walking as a group, and one person will just turn to his right and just start urinating on the street. He said, that's not Islamic. He said, but in America, what do? They go into a separate private room and they use the restroom, quietly, and they do it on their own. He says, so now it's important for you to judge and look between what is Islamic in either culture. Now you're going to see both. You're going to immerse yourself in both. Now, when I heard this story, it resonated with me personally. Being a Pakistani born here in America, growing up here, seeing what America is all about, hearing all these different things and watching TV and getting influenced by some of the beautiful aspects of it, of his American culture, and also hearing about some of our culture, beautiful examples of our culture from back home, and not being sure what I need to do or where should I opt or which one should I incline myself more towards. And then as I got older, just I guess luck of the coin, I started reading a little bit more and just pinpointing what was more Islamic. If I heard my family emphasize something that I could sense that was not very Islamic, so something sounds too extravagant or something that Islam really wouldn't endorse, I would get deeper into it and find out, no, it's really just cultural. And then I would find that there's other aspects here in America that are more connected to Islam. And so this balance is very critical. And I think for us today in this particular conversation, we have to be reassured of one thing, and that is that Islam has the answers to everything. One of our pioneer missionaries, Sufi Bengali Sahib, he's the third missionary to come to America, and he quotes this very amazing thing. He says, there's an old Greek saying about this demon who, whenever he would approach a person, he would ask him a question. And if that person was unable to answer the question, he would devour that person immediately. And he continued to do this. And so Sufi Bengali Sahib says that this same demon exists in every era and in every time. And those people, those are the representatives of religion or religions themselves. And when a religion cannot answer a question of the day, it too gets devoured. And he ends it with a beautiful, powerful statement. He says, but Islam has the answers to everything. It will never be in that scenario. So that's the first element I wanted to share, really with everybody. And that is that Islam has those answers. But as I can also understand, and many young folks have given me this feedback that, we understand these concepts. We understand what the Holy Prophet ﷺ has said. We've read it. But our parents, sometimes they don't listen, or they don't believe us, or they've grown up a certain way. And so I want to just highlight one more aspect, and that is that I know I cannot convince somebody who's convinced that having a boy is better than a girl, or all of those different cultural aspects there. I cannot undo whatever might be in your mind, but I can share with you something that's very critical that the Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam, or the Promised Messiah alayhi salam, had mentioned in a commentary of Surah Al-Baqarah, just in the very beginning. You all have read this countless times. It says, Hudallil Muttaqeen. It is a guidance for the righteous. Now, a question, I heard this growing up in Tahir Academy, in fact, is that why would it be a guidance for the righteous? Why not for the sinners? Why not for people who need the correction? Why righteous here? And it's so beautiful how the Promised Messiah explained it. He said here, this is not the pinnacle of righteousness, but this is actually speaking about a prerequisite to righteousness, the preliminary, you can say the basic standard of what righteousness is. And he says it is having an open mind, having an open heart, being unbiased. Once you open your mind and open your heart, then you can tread the path of the Holy Quran, and then you can accept all the different concepts it gives you. Otherwise, you'll remain like the Jews and the Christians who may read this Quran, but do not benefit at all. So the same thing happens today. We may share things that are contrary to what you've heard growing up, maybe contrary to what you like to process or the way you like to make decisions. But if you truly take this day and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be as open-minded as possible, then maybe, inshallah ta'ala, you'll be able to benefit from some of the points that we share today, inshallah ta'ala.
So on that thread, one of the questions we actually received was, there's many people who tend to prefer having boys or giving birth to boys over girls. Why is this preference prevalent, and how do we tackle it Islamically?
So I'll jump in right away if that's okay.
Yeah,
I felt so one thing is, like, and this is interesting how myself and Dibba Sab are here. So I, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, I have 3 daughters, and Dibba Sab has sons. And hashtag girl dad, as they call it. I'm very proud and happy. I genuinely prayed. Never once did I pray, Allah, give me a boy or a girl. I said, Allah, give me 3. Whatever those 3 are, make them the best that they possibly can be. Make them righteous. Whatever those prayers are, you can imagine. And I think it's very important for us to remember, because as you can imagine, somebody who has 3 daughters, I had 2 different reactions to my 3rd daughter. I had some who sent me a very famous hadith, right? That, somebody who raises 3 daughters, will be, has a chance to go into paradise, really. Right, and so that was one aspect of some of the, the references I received. While others said, oh no, 3 daughters? Oh no. And this is not just from relatives. This is not just from Jamaat folks. This is from strangers on the street. This is from one of the nurses that was there to help us during our process of our 3rd daughter. So this is, it was very open. It was very clear that some people were like, no, 3rd. And in fact, I remember one gentleman here in the mosque said, no, you have to try again. There's no way you can stop. But I'm saying that frustration was there. But what they forget, though, is the beauty of what, when God gives you something, this is a true gift from God. And having daughters, I cannot explain, is another gift altogether. And any parent, like I said, who prefers that I should have a son over a daughter does not understand the difficulty or the really what the ask is. They're just thinking about some sort of worldly prestige, and they're forgetting what is the ask here. Because recently, you all may have heard this. Hazrat Khalid bin Khamis Ayatollah bin Aziz was asked, why do girls only have 1, animal sacrifice at their birth and boys have 2? And for the longest time, we've had a typical answer, boys are more special, whatever that was. Hazur gave the real essence of the answer. And it was so beautiful that it completely shook minds, really, because he said, boys tend to be more trouble in essence. And so you want to sacrifice more to make sure they stay on track. While girls, by the grace of Allah, they're good, alhamdulillah, for a large extent. So you may not have to sacrifice as much to keep them on the right track. So I think that's really what the essence of it is. If, like I said, if there's a parent who still thinks, no, I must have a boy, then they're not understanding that there's a greater responsibility then, that they have to be able to balance that, and all of that stuff is there. And I'll let Dibba Sab jump in as well. I'm sure he has his own take on this.
Yeah, you almost convinced me that maybe I'm not so lucky to have 2 boys, man. But I'm also proud of my boys, I'm kidding. Now, all jokes aside, it's interesting when you mentioned about strangers in the street. I mean, I was born, raised in Africa, in the Gambia, and the culture is not any different. when, we all know that, multiple marriages is very common in many African countries. This is that one thing that is almost certain. Somebody has two daughters. By the time the third, they say, nah, this woman is not, it's not fertile enough, or it's not, it's not good fortune for you. Like they've started putting in the works for a second wife or even a third wife. You need a son. Your name needs to continue. Nasal chalni chahiye, like this is something that without a son, how's your name going to go forward? That your daughters are going to get married and that's it. Nothing is going to go, she's going to inherit from somebody else and blah blah, all the, and of course we have to go back to the Holy Quran. And again, it's probably a verse that you've heard over and over, or here's a Maulvi speaking. Obviously he's going to quote from the Quran, but honestly, like let's go back to the Holy Quran, right? Where Allah Ta'ala is the one. He reminds us in Surah Shura, right? The 50th verse and the 51st verse. I remember the first time, I'm almost saying the first time, there was a Akika that I attended, and the Imam who was giving that, he's giving a short talk, and he mentioned, this verse. Honestly, it's like the first time I heard this verse. And, I was like in the 5th year of Jamia, I was doing tilawat every day, but it was almost like this was the first time I heard this verse. I'm like, how dare people who call themselves Muslims, even feel bad about having a daughter, or think that it's misfortune in any way. Allah Ta'ala says in verse 50, to Allah belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth. He creates what he pleases. He bestows daughters upon whom he pleases, and he bestows sons upon whom he pleases, or he mixes them, males and females, and he makes whom he pleases barren. Surely he is all-knowing, powerful. All the options that are available. Allah is telling you, I know I'm the one that created not only boys and girls for you, but everything that's between the heavens and the earth, and anything. I created everything, and I choose. It's my choice. It's not about that woman not being able to give you a boy, or only giving you girls, or it's not about you not being, no, that's not what it's about. I have close relatives who would continue to have children no matter how old they are until they get that boy. No verse of the Holy Quran. So what you said in the beginning, it's really powerful, Rabbi Saab, that sometimes, it's so ingrained in culture that, a verse of the Holy Quran is not going to answer it for you. A mulaqat may not answer it for you because it's so ingrained. But if we can open our minds to a verse like this, Surah Shura, verse 50, verse 51, if you hear these conversations, if you hear these things, these are nothing but whispers of Satan. That's what it's all about. Every child, alhamdulillah, is a blessing. And for some, they may not have those children. They may be barren, as Allah Ta'ala so wills it. But even for those people, if you don't have a child, it's Allah's will, and He has other ways of blessing everyone.
I think
So
what's
on that point,
yeah,
go ahead. So I was saying on that point, one thing that we find in Jamaat culture or in Jamaat programs, I'll share one question that we received on this thread. Now getting from boys to girls, now what are activities that are set for boys and girls in our Jamaat, and what's happening there? So the question is, I don't think parents intentionally treat boys and girls differently. However, many things happen without anyone realizing. Many a times it requires extra effort to provide the same opportunities to girls, which just then becomes an excuse. But Jamaat can help set the right example. Boys and girls from a young age should be given equal opportunities in the Jamaat. Boys get opportunities for sports in the mosque, for example. They get more outings. They have more fun stuff. Girls learn arts and crafts. Boys go bowling. So there's a different dynamic there. So girls are asked to play board games while boys get to play real sports. Mostly it's women who don't let girls do fun stuff because they never did it themselves and they think it's okay. This then sets the environment that boys have some inherent privilege, which everyone is accepted. This gets replicated at homes, not intentionally, but on the excuse of ease. So Dibasab, what would you say to this?
There's two elements of this. There are, cases where if I wanted to do push-ups in my basement and I wanted to do, jumping jacks, and my father tells me that, no, as a boy, you're not allowed to do this. Or if my sister wants to do sports at home where she's alone in her room, wants to do some planks and work out, and my mother thinks, no, that's against the dignity of a girl, then there's a problem, right? Then we're talking about huge issues here, that there's a problem in parenting. That's the wrong concept. Nobody says that a woman or a girl should not have access to physical activity or free up her mind and stuff. But when it comes to the Jamaat providing those spaces, again, it's an administrative question, and we all know that the platform is always open. in every Jamaat that the girls or the women want to have those opportunities. They think there are bodies in place, departments in place. We have auxiliaries. I do know that in my local Jamaat, for example, Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya takes a leading role in making sure that all the boys and the men, because that's just within its abilities to create those programs. And I know that Lajna do provide some. But if there's a girl that feels in any Jamaat that she doesn't have those equal opportunities, it just has to be made known. And these things have happened. You know, Rabbi Sahab, I went to Rabwa. The first time I went to Rabwa in 2016, man, I was shocked to see. And again, I was very impressed to see on many levels the organization of the Jamaat and practically how Jamaat displays its organization. When we were doing tours of different places, and when they were, of course, taking us to the Lajna parts of Rabwa, there were no women there because we were all Murabbiyan who had just graduated. And we went to all the different sections. And when I say, from set running tracks of all events, of soccer fields, of volleyball, of badminton, ping pong, everything, I mean, it's all enclosed, fully secured, nicely arranged for women and girls, where they had those spaces for themselves, because Jamaat had the resources and the ability to do it in those places. Or, in London or in Canada, I know that mosques that are able to do that, they provide spaces and specific days for girls and women who want to use those facilities where it's only for them. So those arrangements can be made, and they are made in different Jamaats. And I think if it's known, if there's interest, then inshallah, those arrangements definitely can be made.
Jazakallah. So I think over here we can pivot to a video or a video clip of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih where he talks about children playing outside and the girls playing. Do they have equal opportunities? Kind of on that thread. So I'm going to request Najib Bhai if you can share the words of Khalifatul Masih, and we can take some guidance from there. Wow. Okay. Good.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम हज़ूर, मेरा यह सवाल था कि जब स्कूल में खेलों के प्रोग्राम होते हैं तो कभी कभी हमें बाहर जाना पड़ता है और स्कार्फ उतारना पड़ता है, तो क्या हमें इजाज़त है कि हम
कहाँ बाहर जाना पड़ता है?
जैसे कभी कभी तो अंदर ही होते हैं, लेकिन कभी कभी स्कूल के थोड़े ग्राउंड में जाना पड़ता है जहाँ दूसरे लोग भी होते हैं।
स्कूल के ग्राउंड में, लड़कियों का स्कूल में को एजुकेशन है तुम्हारा? हैं?
मिक्स में, जैसे 14-15 साल की हम लड़कियां हैं।
क्या खेलती हो?
जो कुछ भी खेलते हैं, एक खेलों के प्रोग्राम होते हैं, तो क्या हमें बाहर जाना चाहिए या स्कार्फ के बगैर कि नहीं, क्योंकि दूसरे लोग होते हैं।
कौन होता है वहाँ? दूसरे अपने खेलों में मसरूफ होते हैं, कोई देखने भी आए होते हैं लोग?
नहीं, देखने के लिए नहीं आए होते, वो अपने खेल रहे होते हैं।
बस ठीक है, तो अपनी खेलती रहो।
चलिए ठीक है।
तो लड़कियां खेल रही होती हैं लदा हैं
जी।
लड़कों के साथ फुटबॉल तो नहीं खेल रही?
नहीं,
बस ठीक है,
लड़के अलग खेल रहे होते हैं लेकिन दूर।
ठीक है, खेलती रहो। लेकिन ये नहीं है कि उसमें तुम्हारा जो लिबास है वो ठीक होना चाहिए। अपना ट्रैक सूट वगैरह पहना होता है तो प्रॉपर होना चाहिए, गेम का जो किट है उसकी।
जी।
वैसे तो अगर तुमने थोड़ा सा सर को यूं करके स्कार्फ भी बांधा हो तो कुछ नहीं कहती, नहीं, उससे फर्क कोई नहीं पड़ता खेलने के बाद तुम्हें। लेकिन बड़ी उम्र के बाद नहीं, 12-13 साल तो ठीक है, उसके बाद खेलना छोड़ दो ऐसी गेम में, हैं? उसके
आगे
बाद
जाके तो नहीं होगा,
हाँ, बस 12-13 साल के बाद छोड़ दो खेलना। वो भी जबरदस्ती तो नहीं, फोर्स तो नहीं करते कोई और कौन गेम खेल लो।
नहीं, वो कहते हैं स्कार्फ नहीं लेना।
गेम खेलने के लिए जरूरी तो नहीं कहते कि जरूर ये फलां गेम ही खेलनी है, और गेम्स भी हैं।
एक ग्रुप होता है तो वो ग्रुप में ही रहना होता है, तो दूसरे नहीं कर सकते।
वो मैच होते हैं आपस में।
जी
ठीक है, फिर वहीं खेल ग्राउंड में खेलो, लड़कियां खेल रही हैं तो ठीक है।
ठीक है।
हाँ।
So Jazakallah, first of all, apologies, we don't have the English translation on that, so I'll quickly give a translation of what was asked. So the girl asked Hazur that when you're in school, sometimes in like physical education, they're told that they have to go play outside, but there's no way that they could properly do parda. So can we go play outside? There's boys and girls playing. Can we also play? So I think over here, this is what's really amazing about Khilafat, that gives you that straight answer that's truly Islamic. And then many people might have never thought of this. But Khilafat, like Dibba mentioned, when you refer to Islam, many times you'll find is leading. So Hazur said that so long as what your attires, what you're wearing is appropriate, that you're covered, Even if you can't take your scarf at the time, up to the age of 12 and 13, go ahead and play. As long as you're not playing in a mixed scenario, everyone is doing their own thing, and that while they're playing the sports, it's okay. But after the age of 12 and 13, then you should stop and look into other activities. So to answer that question that I received, and this is Hazur's guidance number one primarily, and Dibbasab also shared that, it's about taking initiative. And just to give an example, at a local Jamaat, they were about to hold a bonfire for New Year's, but they had to cancel due to, the whole situation going on. But people started receiving messages, oh, wow, the boys get to do it, why not the girls? So one of the families, they took an initiative and they said in their backyard, fine, that's actually true. We have daughters. If the boys are able to hold it, everything is safe, let them do it. Immediately afterwards, what we'll do is we'll hold a bonfire, we'll arrange it, make sure that everything is safe, and let the girls have their time. So many times it's just really taking initiative. And if you do feel it, everyone has daughters, you have a different perspective, take the initiative and help them out as well. So just wanted to share that there, and appreciate the panelists' 2 cents there. From here, we'll move on to a mentee question. So Naji Sab, if you can move us through that.
Sure. Let me share the screen now. Sorry, I pulled up the wrong screen by accident. Yeah, so as you mentioned, we'll go ahead and go to the mentee questions. As has always been done, you can go to menti.com. That's menti.com and use the access code 4607-4600 to answer the question, or you can scan the QR code. We'll inshallah also send the direct link in the chat box. But for now, the question's on the screen and it reads, do you think there is an unfair, different treatment of sons versus daughters? Is this a real problem? Back over to you.
Sure. So I think the whole point here is we're trying to gauge the audience. Do you feel it at a local level that this happens? Is there a preferential treatment? Are boys or girls any other way? Are they being preferred? Are they giving any special treatment that the other kids are not being given? So I think we have up to now, 60 responses. So by and large, I think a lot of us are aware, and this topic comes up for a reason, and I think the audience nailed it, that there is at times preferential treatment given. Is it Islamic? That's what we're diving into here. And that's the whole point, is given that equal treatment, given that treatment according to love and compassion.
Oh.
So 90% say, yes, it is a real problem, and 10% say no. But now what will come to...
We got...
Setting, I think we got up to 80. Najiba, did you see the last number?
Going at least a sample of 100. I'm always worried about the sample size.
Sure.
And again, I don't question the audience's preponderance. I think the results are not going to change. It's just that way. My request is for others to chime in so we can have at least 100 answers to every question that we ask. There are other questions coming up as well.
So now we said we have about 128.
Shukr, alhamdulillah. I think I feel better. Please continue, sir.
So I'm going to come to the panelists about that. What do the panelists feel?
So you want to go first?
Sure, why not? So I think there's 2 aspects of this idea of treatment, right? Of parents treating their children differently.
My apologies for interrupting, Ravi Saab.
No worries.
I think we're going to just take the audience at their word and keep going.
Absolutely.
Right? The
Agreed.
audience, we asked a question, we know the answer. So let's move on. We feel, I think right now, we just work with what the audience is saying. Inshallah ta'ala, try to get to solutions.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going in that same direction.
I knew you were, so that's why I felt comfortable.
It's
So
telepathic
we'll do
connection. Don't worry, I got it. So I was actually going to say, that, when it comes to the treatment aspect, there's 2 aspects, I think, that parents need to, revisit how they may be treating their children. One is the aspect of how much they give, what they provide to their children. And the other side is the restriction aspect, how much they restrict, how much they stop, how much they regulate. And both of these are very critical and very important. And when we look at ahadith, we see that when it comes to the giving aspect, we see fathers, for example, in ahadith are instructed to teach both sons and daughters. Then when we see more the aspect of giving, we see that whenever it's, a child is weak in a certain aspect or a certain skill or even manners, then the parents are required to fill that gap. So it's not that everybody should be taught the same thing, and if one is struggling, tough luck, we give everybody the same equal amount. No, we got to fill that gap. And there's a famous meme, anybody can search it, about equality and justice. And so what it says, it basically has a wall, and it has three people: has a baby, has a teenager or young kid, and an adult. And they're all trying to look over this wall, but obviously the baby can't, and neither can the teenager, but the adult is able to look over the wall. So they give them 3 boxes to stand on. They're all equal boxes, but what does that do? So here, example, they're all 3 boxes. They're all going to look over, but guess what? Who's going to see over it? Maybe the teenager, definitely the adult, but the toddler is never going to see over it. But then if you take it to another step, which is the idea of equality, where you give the extra boxes to the younger kid. Now everybody can look over it. But then there's another element of justice, which is you raise everybody up high enough that their standard is high. So I think that aspect of giving is important. And I'll just relate it to what's happening in this world today. We see that there are constant pushes of activism and whatnot in America, even about how women have certain needs that they need to be fulfilled, and society, whether it's maternity, leave or whatever it may be, ignores those needs, pretends as if men or women are equal. They should be given the same amount of time off. And by that nature, women don't need to have maternity leave. They can have a baby and go straight to work. But that's not a reality of what the real sense is. And the same happens as parents. If you, for example, are giving allowance to your children, and your daughter may have extra needs because maybe she's having menstrual cycles, whatever that may be, as a parent, you can't be like, I don't really care. Everybody gets the same. You have to then keep that in mind and fulfill whatever that gap is that you need to fulfill, so that they can have the best future possible. The other part
I think you answered like 3 of the upcoming questions in one. So I think you did perfect. I think you killed them all, mashallah. So I think I don't even have to ask the next 3. So I think what we'll do is go to the live questions. I think covered it all. Perfect.
Okay. Jazakallah.
So I think Najib, can you bring on the couple of raised hands we see, and I think we'll take it from there.
Jazakallah Rabbi Sahib, and alhamdulillah, again, there are a lot of raised hands, so I think a lot of people want to chime in on the conversation and ask their questions. But again, as a reminder to everybody, whoever has their hand raised, please try to stay near your computer. Your turn may come sooner than you expect. So we'll go ahead and start with the first question from Tayyib Mahmood Sahib. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay. So my question is that, how do we define what is considered fair or unfair? I'll explain this with an example. So let's say, a family has a kid and a daughter, a son and a daughter. It is very common in our Jamaat that they would send their kids, sons to abroad for education. But when it comes to daughter, they don't, even though they are more capable, they have better grades. But for some reason, even very reputable families think that it is not appropriate to send a daughter alone abroad for education. So would we consider it fair, unfair? What are the standards to define what is fair, what is unfair?
Jazakallah. So I think a quick answer to that is, with regards to something recently we heard from Hazrat Khalid Masih Khamis, and generally, this was the other aspect I was going to talk about, which is the restriction aspect. One of it, of course, I've already covered, is the giving aspect. But the other of it is usually where we have our challenges, where we restrict girls more than we restrict boys. And so to give you a simple example, if a boy is saying, I'm going to come home at 1 a.m. after lab, while the same age daughter says, no, I'm going to come, I want to come home at 1 a.m. too from a lab. They're like, no, you got to come home at 7 p.m. It's Isha, it's dark, you can't stay out late. Now, the challenge here is, it's not that we want to say, no, girls can also stay till 1 a.m. It's actually the opposite. It's where the boys have to be also instructed that hadith, based on hadith, you also have to come early. You also got to check in just the same. And to give you an example of that, Hazur was asked about whether girls can go for sleepovers, just another example. And there he didn't just say girls cannot. He also said boys can't either, by the way, just for the record, in case boys think that they can do that. So I think really when it comes down to the restriction aspect, there are some general rules when it comes to how we need to treat our children in keeping them safe in Islam. And there isn't that always a boy so he can go do certain things and a girl so he can't do certain things. That balance has to be found within Islam. And that's why I mentioned we have to delve deeper into Islam and figure out what it really is that's going on, instead of just asking questions back and forth.
Yeah, there's another aspect to this as well. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi rahimahullah, was asked about, there was a Western lady who would ask this in a question and answer session. She actually was talking about a Muslim family who would not allow their daughter to go on these trips for a couple of days, while as they allowed their son to go for it. And she asked Huzur this question. And as Khalid Mutsi Rabi, rahimahullah, looked and said, look, you got to understand that there's reality and there's what we may think is the truth in theory.
The
In
ideal.
theory, we will say that, treat all of them equally. They should also let their daughter go for 3-4 days on that trip. And Azur said, look, give a comparison. Now we live in a society where even in school, okay, this parent is not as strict or terrible as you may think the parent is, because they're allowing their daughter and their son to both go to school. We know that the schools aren't the safest, right, nowadays. Even we know that there are problems between teachers and boys and teachers and girls, where there's abuse, there's sexual involvement in relationships and all those stuff. But they're ready to undermine that and let their children go to school, first of all, right? Exposing them to some level of risk. So a family, a Muslim family that's morally right, is already making some level of sacrifice. But this is a must. They want their kids to be educated, so they're ready to take some level of risk. But do you think that when the boys and the girls go on a trip or they go far away, and in this case you talk about going to college, do you think, or do we say that since that's maybe the right thing to do, or that's the equal thing to do, are we thinking that society is also such that in those spaces men and women are exposed to an equal level of risk? We know that that's not the reality. Cases of men and women being mixed, or research shows that in relationships or all these different things, we know to a great degree that girls tend to be on the losing side for the most part. We know that, right? That's the reality of things. So what Islam does is it gives you preventative methods that you can take. And this is exactly what Huzur was talking about. If that parent is choosing to send their child to school, okay, that's a must, and they're ready to take those risks. But to go on a trip is not a must, right? That's a choice. And they're not ready to take risks for things that they have choices for. Because when they go into that trip, you look at yourself as a moral family or Muslim family that's allowing your daughter to go into the specific amount of where there's mixed gathers there, and enough monitoring that's happening, where the space that you want your daughter to be in, can we guarantee that there'll be parda? Can we guarantee that those two will be separated? As the case that Huzur asked, the first thing was, who else will be there when they're playing that sport? Is it just girls, or will there be spectators? And she said, no, there's no spectators, it's just us. And the boys and the girls, will they be separated? Yes. That means there's monitoring. So of course the daughter can go on there. But if they're going far away and they're exposed to things, then it's a decision that you have to make. But the reality is that the society that we live in, we know that for the most part, girls tend to lose more. They tend to be at more danger than boys. So Huzur's guidance there is that we should not expect that family, that Muslim family, to make choices to expose themselves to risks where they don't have to. It's not a must. It's optional, and that should be okay.
Jazakallah Dibasab. Najib, I think what we'll do is we'll go on rapid fire with the rest of the questions, whatever we have lined up, and then pull up a clip of Khalifa Rabi that I think that Basab and Kursab both alluded to, and that is that you have to have open conversations with your children and let them speak their mind. So we'll move on to that. But Najib, over to the next question.
Jazakallah, Rabbi Sahab. So as Rabbi Sahab mentioned, we'll come to the next question from Tuba Rizwan Sahiba, followed by Naseem Bajwa Sahib, followed by Naima Mahmood Sahiba. So for all of you, please stay ready for your questions. Tuba Rizwan Sahiba, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
First, I have something to say for Amir Sahib. Then I have a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
हर गांव पे फरिश्तों का लश्कर हो साथ साथ, हर मुल्क में हर जगह हर वक्त आपकी हिफाजत खुदा करे. Now my question is, why are people not happy when a girl is born?
Those people are not happy. I feel sorry for them. I had 3 girls. I was happy for all of them. And I'll give you another example. Hazur mentioned recently that we heard about how Hazrat Adam alayhi salam and his wife Eve, in this case, it's mentioned that Eve is like a rib. Hazur mentioned that this rib, if you just examine why Allah calls women a rib, you'll find out that the rib, in fact, protects the most vital organs. And the most vital of them, of course, is the heart and the lungs. So women, in fact, girls, when they are born and they come into our society, they in fact protect the most important aspects of our society, and they help it to grow and stay alive long time. So if there's anybody who doesn't understand this, I feel sorry for them and we pray for them. Otherwise, by the grace of Allah, those who understand it can really benefit from it.
And just
Jazakallah, Rabbi Saab.
please, very quickly, our dear, beautiful daughter, I wanted to promise you that I have conveyed your message to respected Amir Saab. He's not on our webinar today, but your beautiful couplet, very timely. May Allah bless you and your
Ameen.
parents as well. I have
Ameen.
conveyed the message.
Jazakallah. Najib bhai, can we get on to the next question?
Sure. The next question is from Naseem Bajwa Sahab. Naseem Bajwa Sahab, if you're there, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question. And if we don't have Naseem Bajwa Sahab, then we'll go to Mubarak Ahmi Sahib. Mubarak Sahib, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Salam.
Yeah, so my question is that, I mean, a lot of things have been said, but I feel like I have one son, and I have two daughters. And while my daughters were growing up, they always felt that in Jamaat programs and Jamaat activities, they felt that their brother had more opportunities compared to them. For instance, when they had ijtima, my son had ijtimas as a tifl, they would go to places which are not in the masjid. For instance, they went to Yosemite, they went to New York and all other places, while my girls never had a chance to do that. And I understand that it is because of the funds that are raised by men, and the budget for Ijtima for boys comes out from that. But my question is that when, according to the Holy Quran, men have been made nigrans, then is it not the job, or is it not the responsibility of Jamaat officials to make sure that when they are arranging ijtimas for boys and girls, then they should be of, at least they should be comparable. For instance, if boys are going to Yosemite, maybe girls may not be taken that far, but they should be taken out as well. So that is one of my concerns, and I'm voicing it because I have always heard complaints from my daughters, not only my daughters, but all other girls which are present in Jamaat, many girls. And I would just say that things get complicated when our girls see this difference in reaction of, or I should say, treatment of girls differently from boys. And it is felt a lot. And I can say that because I'm a mom of two daughters. And the other thing that I feel is that when in a mosque, when we are allocating spaces for men, for instance, you said there are basketball courts or whatever is made for boys, then I suggest and humbly request that a similar thing be made for girls as well at the same time. And I say this because it's not possible for girls to be given the same site, because it will be in the open and girls will not have access to it. Or if girls are given access, it is during weekdays when they cannot use it because it's cool during the weekdays. So whenever we make mosques, when we are building mosques all the time, new mosques, we should make sure that we are adopting equal or giving equal opportunities to our boys and girls. And once we make this happen in our mosques, then this will translate back into our homes as well. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Let me take that question quickly. Two-part answer. I agree with you. I think mistakes have been made in the past when it comes to trips and recreational activities. May Allah forgive us. As National Tarbiyat Department, I will give you my word that we are extremely cautious about it when we schedule our spiritual fitness camps every year. So moving forward, if you feel that a spiritual fitness camp did not offer similar facility to both boys and girls, please let us know. We would like to correct it in real time. But what happened in the past, unfortunately, I can't undo that. Second point you made about facilities is a little bit more complicated. I can't speak for everyone, but I think truly it's a matter of resources. It takes a lot of resources. I've served as a Jamaat president to provide that sort of equal support and activities. And respected Amir Saab has mentioned multiple times, some may not like it, but this is straight talk, real issue, that we have to improve our financial sacrifice. Hazrat Saab has also talked about the practical aspects of how organizations require funding to run at optimal level. When we don't have that sort of funding, then there are difficult choices to be made at local level. Just like as parents, we cannot do everything for our children because of affordability issues. I know some will not like this answer, but it is the truth. I can tell you that we would love to have a swimming pool that allows parda for our boys and girls. It's a matter of resources. We would love to have a gymnasium where our girls can come and play at a time of their own choice. But those are very heavy investments. My request is that we need to start thinking holistically about that second aspect. But as far as trips are concerned, regular activities are concerned, Tarbiyat department, because of Hazrat Saab's leadership and instruction, is fully committed to making sure our boys and girls get absolute equal access to resources. Jazakumullah for your question.
I want to say one more thing, if I have time, please.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so my question is phrased to Murabbiyan especially, that do you think that women compared to men face more challenges, not only generally in the world, but specifically in the Western world? And because I say this because I have two daughters, and my son actually told me that, Mama, I have absolutely no problem in what do you say, adopting to this culture, because, and when I say adopting to this culture, is that he was readily accepted in this culture as a man because there wasn't any difference. However, I must say that girls go through a lot, and especially, and I'm not against parda. I observe parda, fully observe parda, and I'm a working woman. I understand that. But do you think that women undergo more challenges compared to men? Having said that, should we make or make an effort to make Jamaat activities or something that is more acknowledgeable of the challenges that women go through? I don't know if I've been able to phrase my question, but I hope that it makes sense to you.
Jazakallah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kosa.
Jazakallah. So I think the best way to unravel this, again, going back to our original topic, which is how should parents treat the children? It is that sometimes our parents forget to emphasize the necessary injunctions of the Quran and Hadith to both our sons and daughters. For example, I know this, in most of our homes, we focus, and even in Jamaat, we focus a lot on parda. And when you hear the word parda, most people think that means hijab on a woman. But they forget that Islam talks about parda for both men and women. And this is, again, where how many times have we sat down as parents, talk to our sons about what level of parda they should do? Let me just break it down for you, because the human psyche is different just enough that Islam acknowledges that difference and it guides people accordingly. For example, they've done a study where they've identified how men are attracted to women and how women are attracted to men. And it's very different as compared to what me and you may think on a daily basis. For example, they have found that when men look towards women for attraction, they simply look at the body, they look at the physical aspects of it, and they don't look anything beyond that. And that is why Islam, in response to that attraction, says that women should then cover themselves. They should wear a scarf, they should wear loose clothing, and so on and so forth. But now the same study tried to find out how women look towards attraction of men. And they found that women don't look at the physical body. They did a study where they had a group of men. Some were very handsome, but they were wearing janitorial uniform, and others who were, 50-50, but they were wearing doctor uniforms. And women were more attracted towards the doctor uniforms. And so they said that there's an attraction of wealth that women may identify. Now, I remember I mentioned this a few years back, and some of the young legend had said, what are you, Nauzubillah, calling us gold diggers? And I said, no. The answer really here is that women have enough sense to know the future of that relationship. They have enough sense to know that this relationship will then become a unit. There will become a sense of a financial security, and there will be a child somewhere at this point, which is why that attraction is there. Now, if we acknowledge that each have their own necessary attraction, so what do we need to teach our boys? That they shouldn't be flaunting their wealth. This is why they're not allowed to wear gold. They're not wear silk. These are some of those elements of what parda they should do, especially in the Quran. It says about lowering your gaze. How many of us have had that conversation with our sons and said, don't watch, for example, pornography. Don't look at women when they walk by. How many of us have had that conversation as compared to how many of our parents have had that conversation with their daughters? Make sure you wear your scarf. You look like this. And I'm not saying not to have that conversation with the daughter. That's critical. Keep it going. But please introduce this other element that the boy should understand, that if there is, for example, there's a hadith that if you see somebody beautiful go by, that first look, fine, it's forgiven. It's that second look that you make that is haram. That's not permitted. And I've heard all kinds of boys jokingly, because again, they haven't heard this enough. They've jokingly said, that's why you got to hold on to that first glance, or that kind of, they make these kind of jokes, just trying to justify how they behave in society. So I understand the different trajectories where your son may feel confident, I can easily assimilate, and the daughter saying, no, I can't. But what we must understand is that this world has all kinds of attractions and temptations, and Islam is there to protect both our boys and our girls. And if we acknowledge that, we'll embrace it more so than just forcing a parda on our boys or girls. I think that's important to note.
We'll move on to the next question.
Ji, Jazakallah, Rabbi Sahab. And so I see that Naseem Badr Sahab is back. Hopefully we can get him on the line this time. And Naseem Badr Sahab, if you're there, please go ahead and ask your question. And if we don't have Naseem Badr Sahab, and I apologize for not being able to get you on the line, would Nasser Khan Sahab for your question. Nasser Khan Sahab, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. And if we also don't have Nasser Khan Sahab, we can go on to Uzma Imran Sahiba. Uzma Sahiba, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question. Uzma Sahiba, go ahead. They may be on by mistake, so we can go on to the next questioner then. Inacio Fernandez, please go ahead and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm a new member of the Jamaat, me and my son. And, I guess listening to you guys, it kind of opened up something to me. I want to know what I need to do to get my 11-year-old son more involved in the community. What are the things that we can do, or me as a father, to help him out along the way, and I guess make the process and the transition smoother for him, and inshallah make him a helper of the Jama'ah. Barakallah fi.
Jazakallah. I think Dibasab also serves when it comes to new converts, so this is perfect. Go ahead, Dibasab.
So Inacio Fernandez, mashallah, it's good to hear you again. He's recently moving to Delaware, which is part of the Philadelphia Jamaat. And alhamdulillah, he signed the bat on New Year's Day just a few days ago, and he's been very, very passionate about getting his son involved, whose also name is Abdullah, 11 years old. He actually came here on his birthday on January 2nd. I've already contacted Principal Sahib of Tahrir Academy for Philadelphia. Now it's happening online for now. So inshallah, your son will be enrolled as soon as possible, and the principal is aware of it. He has your contact information. Tahrir Academy is again set up by this department for moral training of our children, which is for some Jamaats it's on Saturdays, for some Jamaats on Sundays, where it's a full running school. On normal days, it happens on site at the masjid, where we have trained teachers. We have a very very robust syllabus for all ages, all levels. It's a fully functional, very great system that's been going on. So inshallah, getting yourself involved in that and many other programs that are available for all children and for yourself, we'll make sure that he's on board with all of those, inshallah. And then Jazakumullah for coming on.
If we can move on to the next question.
Jim, so it seems that those are all the raised hands we have for now. If there are some written questions, if you want to go there, but otherwise those are the live questions for now.
Perfect.
I was gonna just throw. I was gonna say, what Kausa Saab was answering about the question of challenges that girls face. I think that really needs to be reiterated, because the same way that we can look physically at a girl who has a piece of cloth on her head or not, right? We can easily say it like that, and somebody who's not a Muslim can judge by that. Whereas for the boys, we can't easily point that out and say, are they doing parda or not? But if the boys were to do that, we know that even in schools, if a boy says to his friends they want to go and just go on party, and the boy says, no, I don't want to go, or a girl wants to talk to a boy and the boy says, no, I'm a Muslim, I'm lowering my gaze, they're almost going to look at you like an idiot. You're going to be a laughing stock. People are going to say, they call you all sorts of names, that, oh, you dare not speak to a girl. They have these pranks where a girl will try to do or say some things to you to see if you run away to the opposite side or if you talk to them. So, there's a lot of unseen challenges that just because we have sons, we don't tend to hold them accountable, or we think it's okay. We know about drugs, for example, that's so rampant in our society nowadays, in this West, in schools, I'm saying in colleges, during exams, kids are taking all forms of drugs. And if a boy does that, maybe people may see it as, okay, bete na karo, they smoke greens once in there, we try to keep it. But if a girl does the same thing, we lose our minds. Why is it that? Maybe we trust our boys a little more with that, to think that, okay, it's okay. But that shouldn't be the case. So when we go more into the details of what that parda really means, as Murabi Saab is saying, and we really hold ourselves, when we hold our sons accountable to the same standards, they're going through that same level of struggle to fit in the society. It shouldn't just be easy to fit in the society. And as I said in the beginning, as the Muslim who was saying, we're not trying to fit in to say that, yeah, we're up to date with everything that's going on. We are okay with, all this LGBTQ and everything. Yeah, I reserve my comments. I don't dislike them. I like this and that. As the Muslim is saying, we're trying to go back 1500 years. If you're trying to do that in the society, you won't just easily fit in. You can ignore the things, but if you want to stand by your principles, then it's really tough. And just to give a quick example, Sahibzada Mirza Waqas Saab, the son of Huzur, he was, during the Review of Religions God Summit program, he was talking about how Huzur instilled the love and recognition of Allah Ta'ala in them, that when they were in elementary school in Ghana, him and his sister, when they were little kids, in school, they would expect them to say that Jesus is the Son of God. He said, but we wouldn't say it because our parents didn't teach us that. We were taught Tawheed. Huzur made sure that the first surah we learned was Surah Ikhlas, and he's very particular about that. He said, but when we told the teacher that we're now going to say Jesus is the Son of God, they actually physically punished both of them, Huzur's kids. The teacher beat them up. They went home, they cried, they came back the next day, same thing, they wouldn't say it. And the teachers beat them up. So Huzur went there and he talked to that family, to the principal, and told him, I don't want my kids to say these things. But when he came back, he said Huzur would tell us the stories of Hazrat Bilal, who had to endure physical pain just because he believed in one God. Huzur said, if you have to be beat in school because you say God is one, that's your sacrifice. This is to an elementary school child. So it's not that easy to just fit in if we stand by our principles.
On that note, I wanted to add a quick point, if that's okay.
No, sir.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Give a virtual hug to everyone and remind us, let's stay short, one question, one answer. Okay. So most of our questions are taken care of. Sure. I really appreciate people joining in. I'm sure there are written questions in line. We want to get maximum benefit from our missionaries.
I'll just add a comment in on there was a comment made about not having enough resources for women or for girls to be able to hold their program. So I believe Sadr Sahiba Lajna Maila has provided her response on this. So she said, Assalamu alaikum, regarding the question on disparity of activities for boys versus girls. There are opportunities for girls to have similar activities as boys. Members just need to ask and present ideas for logistics. And money is not the issue. Jazakallah wa salam Sadr Sahib al-Lajna. So I believe sometimes, I've seen it happen as well. Many times these conversations happen internally, or we'll just tell our friend, but not necessarily someone who can do something about it. So if there's something that does come up, take the initiative, take it to your Sadr Lajna, and this is what she's presenting for us. Najee Sahib, can you...
My also request will be for our respected Sadr Lajna Sahiba that she can chime in with an answer as well if she feels appropriate. I'm glad she's on. I did not know about it. Great.
Jazakallah. Najee Sahib, can we get the next question?
So we have some new hands coming up, I think sparking some new conversations. So we'll go to the questions from Amir Vakar Sahib, followed by Shiraz Ahmed Sahib. So Amir Vakar Sahib, please go ahead and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
What's up?
Actually, one of the thing I'm missing, that why don't we have a female speaker? We all have the male speakers all the time.
Sure. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih has given very clear instruction on this, that Lajna Imaillah is the auxiliary where ladies can have ladies speakers, female can even lead prayers with other females. And this is the Sharia. And our policy comes from Khalifatul Masih. And that's what we are following. Ladies can ask questions, they can participate in the discussion. The fact that male speakers are here doesn't mean that we are better than the ladies. We're simply following policy.
Jazakallah. I believe Sadr Sahiba is on as well. I don't know if she was asked to unmute, but we can get her perspective.
Absolutely.
Sahiba, if you'd like to share any comments, you can feel free to unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
I was wondering if that question would come up, but so Naib Amir has answered it very well. And in addition to that, Hazur will give special permission for Lajna members to speak at certain Jamaat events, but in keeping with the etiquettes of Islam, usually we don't speak, but that is not any indication that we're not able to represent the topic thoroughly, just the same as a male. So Jazakallah.
And I will actually take this opportunity to respectfully invite our respected Sadr Lajna to every program so she could answer questions wherever appropriate. I think Hazrat Sahib has allowed that, and we are fortunate to have you.
Jazakallah, Namir Sahib. There's one comment in the, I think someone sent directly. I want to address that because I believe Khalifa Rabi Rahmatullah has given an essential parenting tip on this. So the comment is, I think it's important to remind kids that feel their parents don't trust them, that it's not that they don't trust them. It's that parents don't trust the society around them and want them to be protected from any evils around them. So I know that sometimes, I think we've heard this gripe many times. I think the Murabbiyan can vouch. Sometimes kids feel like that they're not trusted or there's suspicion, all of that. So if I can ask Najee Sahib to please pull up the clip of Khalifa Rabi Rahmatullah when he talks about trust.
फूफी जान नवाब मुबारका बेगम साहबा हज़रत अम्मा जान की तरबियत के मुतल्लिक कुछ उसूल बयान करती हैं जो आपके लिए हमेशा के लिए रहनुमा असूल हैं। इसी तरीक़ पर अगर आप अपने बच्चों की तरबियत करें तो इंशाअल्लाह बड़े होते तक वो नेक रहेंगे। नंबर 1, बच्चे पर हमेशा एतबार और पुख्ता एतबार ज़ाहिर करके उसको वालिदैन के एतबार की शर्म और लाज डाल देना, ये बहुत बड़ा असूल तरबियत है। तो बच्चे पर एतबार करें और उसको शक से न देखा करें। अगर कोई गलत भी काम कर रहा है तो आपके एतबार की नज़रों के ताबे वो इस्लाह पजीर हो जाएगा। और ये समझते हुए कि मुझ पर एतबार किया जाता है, अल्लाह ताला की फज़ल से आइंदा वो आपको गलत बातें बताने की कोशिश नहीं करेगा।
So I think that's important for both us as children and as parents. I do sometimes feel that maybe, parents and their, and again, this is for parenting. We're not here to address children. We're here to address how can we better parent. Khalifa Rabi Rahmatullah shows that positive reinforcement, and even data shows, is way more effective than always saying don't. If they feel it, that sense of dignity will come in their own heart, like, hey, my parents trust me, and they'll stop because of that. And there are some honestly truly gems out in our Jamaat and on the streets who deal with day-to-day issues and the things that they stay away from because they honestly said, I don't know how my mom or my dad would look at me when they see these things. So I just wanted to add that in with Khalifa Ibn Abdallah's guidance on this matter. And we'll take it back to the panelists with the following questions. So Naji Saib, go ahead, please.
Dr. Rabbi Saab. So next we come to Shiraz Ahmed Saib. Shiraz Ahmed Saib, please go ahead, unmute and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
Yeah, my question is that we are talking about the topic of parents treating their sons and daughters. There is one aspect of it is the creation of a relationship with the Khalafat and with the Khalifa of the time. So with that, I think so the best way to like connect with the Khalifa of the time is to write a letter to share their problems, like day-to-day problems, like having difficulty not praying on time, or maybe not getting marks in the school or in playing in the field. So how we can improve these things and convey the parents that they have to practice this thing on regular basis, so that children can see them, that they are sending the letters, they start sending the letters and writing their problems to Khalifa and asking advice from him, instead of just looking around, oh, my friend this thing, so I will do that thing. So I think so what I'm asking the question is how we can improve this in the parents, that they start doing it so the children can start doing it.
In 2012, my class, we had graduated from Jamia, and we had a mulaqat with Hazur Ayyadullah bin Asal Aziz. And somebody had asked Hazur in this meeting, saying that Hazur, we sense that you must love the UK Jamia students more than us, because naturally you're closer to them, you know their names. And so we're all about to go in the field and we may not have that time spent with you like they did. How do we bridge that gap? How do we become close to you? And Hazur's response was very simple. He said, all of you, he loves all of us equally, and this applies to the whole Jamaat. But he also said, if you want a living, breathing kind of relationship with me, an ongoing relationship with me, then write to me, write regularly. So you already gave the answer in your address. That is, of course, write to Hazur. But there's a little bit deeper, this is like an onion. You have to get deeper into this. And the deeper aspect is, we know in the Holy Quran, it's samena wa atana, listen and obey. Don't just obey. Obey's aspect is that he is coming to you and telling you what to do, and then you do it. But there's an aspect of listen, which is, we have to find those opportunities of listening to Hazur, of getting deeper in, like this week with Hazur. That's an amazing program. We should all be watching it regularly, sitting with our kids. Friday sermon, there's even a children's version of Friday sermon. There's Abid Khan Saab's diary. There's so many aspects. In fact, one story I want to share, even Al-Hakam, for example, shares all kinds of insights and personal interviews with Hazur. That's how you have that personal touch with Hazur. And give you one example of what it means to be a parent. There's an article written about Hazur as a father. And that article, Hazur is his own son mentions that for the 17 years that they lived in, Gresson Hall Road, the old, Fazl Mosque area, he said, every morning, my father, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadullah bin Asal Aziz, would call me to wake me up for Fajr. Now, mind you, he's not a child, he's not a baby, he's not a teenager. He's a grown man with his own children. And yet Hazur did not forego his responsibility as a father and continued to call his son every morning for those whole 17 years to make sure that his son is awake for Fajr. That's the standard of parenting we need to be at. So in case anybody thinks that just having that one conversation with your child and we're done, or not, I love that you brought up this connection with Hazur and this connection with Salat. He also talks about how Hazur was no business. I mean, he was like no jokes when it came to Salat. Everything else, he was there. He was hanging out with his children all the time. When it was Salat time, the kids knew this is something serious. This is an element, and this is part of our life. So I think all of that is very critical and important to remember, that if we're going to connect with Hazur, we also have to put that real effort in to being a father. And I know most of our parents, or most of our, you can say, Jamaats will share what their biggest weakness is. And that is, sometimes the fathers are absent. They don't take an active role in training the children. They think it's mother's problem, mother's duty. She's supposed to get them to Tahir Academy. She's supposed to teach them the du'ain. Why doesn't my son or daughter know this du'ain? And they turn to the mother. But that's not the reality. The hadiths say that each and every one of us, mother and father, have to be present and have to be helping to make that change.
But can we move on to the next question, please?
So we'll move on to the next question from Sadia Qureshi Sahiba. Sadia Sahiba, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. And if we don't have Sadia Sahiba there, we'll move on to Saida Rehana Sahiba. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. And if we don't have you as well, I will move on to the question from Ibrahim Sahib. Ibrahim Sahib, please go ahead. So you'll need to, for all the people who have been prompted, you'll need to unmute yourself to ask your question. You'll see the mic icon appear on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Ibrahim Sahib, go ahead. So I guess we don't have Ibrahim Sahib either. So move on to Saira Sahiba. Saira Sahiba, please go ahead and ask your question.
I think on the same thread, if we're not able to get a hold of anyone, we'll end with the, or we'll close the live question part and then turn it over to Naib Amir Saab. And just end with one more point, one more video of Khalifa Rabi Rahmatullah on a parenting tip that we can walk away with and then hand it over to Naib Amir Saab.
पांचवा असूल ये बयान करती हैं कि पहले बच्चे की तरबियत पर अपना पूरा जोर लगाओ, दूसरे उनको नमूना देखकर खुद ही ठीक हो जाएंगे। ये बड़ा बच्चा जो है अगर उसकी अच्छी तरबियत कर लोगी तो इंशाअल्लाह ज़ेर तरबियत उस बड़े बच्चे के बाद बाकियों की तरबियत भी अच्छी होती चली जाएगी। कि रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया, आदमी अपने दोस्त के ज़ेर असर होता है, बस तुम में से हर एक ख्याल रखे कि किसे दोस्त बना रहा है। अब बचपन ही से बच्चों के दोस्तों पर नज़र रखनी बहुत ज़रूरी है। बाद लोग इसकी परवाह नहीं करते, हालांकि माँ बाप को दिखाई दे देता है कि किस किस्म के दोस्त हैं। अगर बच्चे के दोस्त अच्छे होंगे तो बच्चा भी ज़रूर अच्छी तरबियत पाएगा। इसलिए आप इस बात का ख्याल रखा करें कि अगर बच्चे के गलत दोस्त देखें तो फिर उन दोस्तों से बच्चे का ताल्लुक़ तोड़ने की कोशिश करें।
Jazakallah. So just as a reminder, these are direct tips from Hazrat Amma Jan, the wife of the Promised Messiah as a mother. And this is being shared by Hazrat Nawab Mubaraka Begum Sahiba, the daughter of the Promised Messiah. So these are very important things that we can just small tips here and there that can instill in our own lives. Over to you, Naib Amir Sahib.
Jazakumullah to our respected panelists. And I can't emphasize enough how important these discussions are, but they can't end here. This is just the beginning. A lot of discussion needs to happen. The why has to be repeated over and over again. Why are we doing these discussions? This is not because of any pressure from the Western world or any of the social pressures. It's truly driven by khashiyat Allah, as Hazrat Masih Maud said, the fear of God. If we don't do something that Quran, Sunnah, Hazrat Masih Maud Khalifatul Masih says, Allah Ta'ala, we don't get away with it, right? فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِسْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. Allah Ta'ala says, that day you will see every deed, even though it may be an atom's weight. This is true for me as the Tarbiyat department. It's true for you as a mother. It's true for you as a father. We cannot just throw everything at Jamaat. The purpose, remember here, was good parenting. So ultimately, again, I'm going to bring it back to individual responsibility as parents. Here are some takeaway points from today's discussion. As was discussed, Surah Ash-Shura verses 50 and 51. This whole notion of punishing people or making painful remarks to a mother as to why the second or third daughter is born. Allah creates what He pleases. He bestows daughters upon whom He pleases. He bestows sons upon whom He pleases. And then He gives you mixed sons or daughters, or leaves someone's barren. If you took away just this one message, I think we've moved a few inches forward. This issue is prevalent in all societies, not just in Pakistani or Ahmadi society. It's practicing in Italians, Irish people, Hispanics. I came to US and I learned it was universal. Islam elevates that. So point number one, from a medical standpoint as well, it's the father's chromosome that determines the gender of the baby, not the mother. Science and Quran are both clear. If that one message we walked away with, I think we've done some justice to our daughters. And this discrimination, by the way, comes from both genders. We have to be honest. This discrimination is not always coming from men, sometimes coming from elder ladies. So let's just have khashiyat Allah, the fear of the God, point number one. Point number two about sports. You all saw the message of Khalifatul Masih, an empowering message. If you're under the age of 12 and 13, girls can go out and play. The point I'm making here is, please ask Huzur when you have a difficult question. We are not your guiding lights. We are not your role models. We're all looking toward, we're all trying to point the finger towards the moon. So this is why a point was made. We should write to Khalifatul Masih. Please write to Khalifatul Masih when you have a question. If Huzur grants you a permission, great, right? Then it's good for you. And we as a community will continue to move forward behind our Imam. Third point about equal resources in programs, spiritual fitness camps. During this program, someone has texted me about their Jamaat and they've given me specifics. And now it allows me to talk to that Jamaat, talk to Sada Sahib al-Lajna, because they thought the issue was stemming from coordination between Lajna and Jamaat. Now it helps me. You've given a specific target, we can work on it. If you see a similar issue in your Jamaat, please make sure you can let National Sadr Lajna Saiba know, or you can let myself or Murabi Tariq Naseem Saab know, or Tala Riyaz Saab know. If we don't know something, we cannot fix it. So please allow us to make sure that we can fulfill our promise. Action items, one for parents, one for Jamaat. If you are a parent, figure out a way, think about it this way. Will your children testify when you're gone? At some stage, all of us go. And the law of nature and probability predicts that chances are, inshallah, our children will outlive us. Ask yourself, will your children after you're gone testify that you are fair in treatment between sons and daughters? Truly, truly ask yourself that question. If the answer is yes, confirm with your children, confirm with your spouse. If your answer is no, please, privately, on a prayer rug, accept it in front of Allah Ta'ala. Do istighfar and take corrective actions. We are all weak people. Don't make it a personal battle, but do ask that question to yourself. What will your children say? What are they saying today? We all think we are Mr. and Miss Perfect until we ask someone, get that feedback. Last point is for Jamaat. Please continue this discussion locally. Majlis-e-Shura asked us that similar webinars on the same topic should then be held locally. The commonest thing we hear from people is we're too busy. Calendar is too tight. We don't have time. Nobody comes. Then you have to ask yourself, are you too busy to spend 30 minutes today and prevent a problem? Or then waste 30 days, 30 months, 30 years down the road when there will be a problem? It's a matter of priorities. It's not a matter of busyness. If you all feel this is important, then as Jamaat officials, this is a Shura recommendation. You all said it. Hazrat Saab approved it. So let's just make sure we do what we said. And with that, please join me for silent prayers. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ameen. Jazakumullah, everyone. If you have any suggestions for us for future programs and future topics,